Asterisk, I was just minding my own business when Karen, the self-appointed HOA queen, decided that my private driveway belonged to the entire neighborhood. At first, it was just annoying complaints and fake violation notices. But then, she trespassed, measured my grass with a ruler. And finally, she called 911, claiming I was blocking a public road on my own property. Asterisk, asterisk. That's when I knew it was time to fight back. What followed was the most insane HOA battle you've ever heard. Power trips, police involvement, a dramatic showdown at the HOA meeting, asterisk, asterisk, and the most satisfying karma you can imagine, asterisk, asterisk. Buckle up, because this is the story of how I took down the most entitled HOA Karen ever. And trust me, you won't believe how it ends, asterisk. Hello, beautiful peoples. Before we dive in, let me know, where are you watching this from? Tell us in the comments and subscribe. A peaceful neighborhood where life was simple until she arrived. The kind of place where people mowed their lawns, kids rode bikes in cul-de-sacs, and everyone minded their own business. That is, until Karen decided that wasn't good enough. She wasn't just any Karen. She was the HOA Karen, self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, armed with a clipboard, a superiority complex, and an uncanny ability to make even the most minor infractions feel like crimes against humanity. If there was a rule, she enforced it. If there wasn't a rule, she made one up. It started small. A passive-aggressive letter about the non-regulation mailbox. A complaint about a garden gnome that was allegedly too whimsical. Then the real conflict began. Karen had set her sights on my land, specifically my driveway. In her mind, it wasn't private property. It was a public right-of-way for the neighborhood. A shortcut. A road. And the fact that I didn't agree? Well, that was simply unacceptable. Karen didn't waste any time making her demands clear. According to her, my driveway was an essential access point for the community and should be available for anyone who needed it. Never mind the fact that it was legally and undeniably my private property. She approached me one afternoon, clipboard in hand, like she was about to deliver the neighborhood's final verdict. "You're blocking access," she announced, as if I had constructed a 12-foot brick wall instead of simply using my own driveway like a normal person. I blinked. "I'm parking in my own driveway." Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. "This is a community space," she insisted. "And you're being very selfish by denying your neighbors a shortcut." It was absurd. But Karen didn't do logic, she did rules. Or, more accurately, she did whatever she wanted and pretended it was a rule. Within hours, an official-looking violation notice appeared on my doorstep. Unauthorized obstruction of community access. It read, in an aggressive font that was trying way too hard to be intimidating. It was signed, of course, by Karen. The power trip didn't stop there. Karen began circling my house like a self-appointed parking enforcement officer, waiting for an opportunity to pounce. One morning, I caught her measuring my grass with a ruler. When I stepped outside, she huffed and declared, "Your lawn is 0.75 inches taller than the HOA standard. That's a violation." I stared at her. "There is no HOA standard for grass height." She sniffed. "Well, there should be." That was Karen's entire approach. Make up rules, enforce them with an iron fist, and expect everyone to obey. And if they didn't? Well, then she had an arsenal of petty tactics waiting in her back pocket. I tried to be reasonable at first. I really did. I calmly explained to Karen that my driveway was not a public road, that property lines existed for a reason, and that, no, she did not have the authority to dictate how I used my own land. Predictably, logic bounced right off her. She folded her arms, eyes narrowing. "You're being very uncooperative." I sighed. "I'm just using my property for its intended purpose." "That's not uncooperative." Karen gasped like I had just suggested we set fire to the HOA handbook. "Well, if you want to be that kind of neighbor," she huffed, "I'll have to escalate this matter." And escalate she did. First came the passive-aggressive notes. Slipped under my door, taped to my mailbox, even one dramatically stuffed into my windshield wiper. Be a team player. Open access benefits everyone. Then came the bogus violation notices. Every morning, like clockwork, a fresh HOA warning would magically appear in my mailbox. Grass too long. Still no official rule on grass height. Trash cans visible from the street. Except it was garbage day. Unauthorized mailbox color. Same color as every other mailbox on the street. It was almost impressive how much time Karen had to harass me. But if she thought I would just roll over and accept her nonsense, she had another thing coming. I started responding in kind but infuriatingly sarcastic ways. When she sent me a warning about my non-regulation front door color, I knocked on her door with a paint swatch identical to hers and asked if she'd like to report herself. When she left another note demanding I adhere to community standards regarding lawn maintenance, I printed out a legally binding copy of my property deed and hand-delivered it with a cheerful, "Looks like my standards are just fine." The neighbors started catching wind of the drama. Some found it hilarious. Others, having suffered under Karen's reign of terror, started quietly rooting for me. But the more I resisted, the more Karen doubled down. Her entitlement was a freight train, and she was determined to derail anything in her path, including reality. Word spread fast. In a neighborhood where the biggest excitement was usually a rogue raccoon knocking over a trash can Karen versus. My driveway became the hottest drama in town. Some neighbors couldn't help but stir the pot. Tom from next door smirked as he leaned over the fence. "So, I hear you're public enemy number one." I rolled my eyes. "Apparently, my driveway is the biggest threat to civilization." He laughed. "Yeah, well, last week, Karen accused my cat of trespassing." My cat. Others, however, were firmly on Karen's side. A small but vocal group of HOA loyalists whispered in hushed tones about neighborhood harmony and the importance of compliance. Karen had her own little fan club, nodding along solemnly as she lamented my disregard for the rules. Then there were the secret rebels, neighbors who had been burned by Karen before and were more than happy to see someone stand up to her. One evening, while I was taking out the trash, I noticed a folded note wedged into my fence. In shaky handwriting, it read, "Stay strong. Karen once tried to fine me for having a suspiciously large bird feeder. She must be stopped." Karen, of course, reveled in the drama. It only fueled her sense of self-importance. She strutted around the neighborhood like a mall cop with a clipboard, announcing to anyone who would listen that she was handling a major property violation. "She's obsessed," whispered Susan from across the street. "I saw her measuring your driveway with a tape measure this morning." I sighed. "Let me guess, she's going to declare it 1 inch too wide." Susan grinned. "Oh, honey, if she can't find a rule, she'll make one up." The neighborhood had turned into a soap opera with a homeowners association subplot. Some people took sides, others just watched for entertainment, and Karen? She was gearing up for her next big move. Because simply complaining wasn't enough anymore. She wanted a full-scale takedown. Karen was not used to losing. The more I refused to bow to her made-up rules, the more desperate she became. At this point, she wasn't just enforcing fake HOA guidelines. She was practically drafting new legislation on the spot. It started with her trespassing. One morning, I caught her on my property, measuring my driveway, again. This time with a clipboard, tape measure, and an expression of righteous fury. I opened the door. "Karen, why are you on my driveway?" She gasped, startled like I had caught her committing a crime. Because, well, I had. I was just checking something." "On my property?" She sniffed. "I have the right to ensure compliance with HOA standards." "Cool. Show me where it says that." Karen glared. "Don't be difficult." I took out my phone and started recording. "This is Karen, standing on my property, measuring my driveway without permission," I narrated, zooming in on her stunned face. "Trespassing is illegal." She let out an indignant huff and stomped off, muttering about neighborhood standards and how no one respects authority anymore. But Karen wasn't done. #, Karen calls 911. Since her HOA tactics weren't working, she escalated to full-blown emergency services. One afternoon, I heard sirens. A police car pulled up. A cop stepped out, looking mildly confused. "We got a call about a blocked public roadway?" I sighed. "Let me guess. Karen." Right on cue, she marched up, hands on hips. "Yes, officer. He is blocking community access with his driveway." The officer looked at her. Then at me. Then back at her. "Ma'am, this is private property." Karen gasped as if she had just been personally insulted. But he's being unreasonable. He's refusing to share his driveway." The officer pinched the bridge of his nose. "Because it's his driveway. You can't just decide someone else's property is community space." Karen sputtered. "But the HOA rules. HOA rules don't override property laws." The cop turned to me. "Sir, do you want to press charges for trespassing?" Karen went pale. I gave her a long, slow look. "No, not today." The officer nodded and gave Karen a warning. She stormed off in a rage, But at that moment, the entire neighborhood knew she had lost. ##### the HOA meeting showdown. Karen's last-ditch effort was an emergency HOA meeting. She showed up with her binder of complaints, ready to take me down. She slammed the binder on the table like it was a Supreme Court case. "This man is a menace to the neighborhood." The HOA president barely looked up. "Karen, we've reviewed your complaints. There's nothing illegal happening here." Karen's mouth fell open. "But we also have reports that you've been trespassing and harassing homeowners. That's a serious issue." Karen turned bright red. Then came the final nail in the coffin. The president slid a violation notice across the table, addressed to Karen. "You have unapproved modifications on your property," he said. "And your holiday decorations were up too long." Karen was speechless. For the first time in history, the neighbors tried and failed to hide their laughter. Her own tactics had backfired spectacularly. And just like that, Karen's reign was over. Karen's downfall wasn't just satisfying, it was legendary. Word spread fast. The woman who had spent years terrorizing the neighborhood with her clipboard and fake rules had finally been put in her place. And the best part, she had been taken down by her own tactics. The HOA, fed up with her nonsense, started ignoring her complaints entirely. Her once powerful violation notices? Tossed in the trash. Her binder of neighborhood offenders? A joke among the board members. But karma wasn't done with her yet. A few weeks later, she received an official HOA fine for her own violations. She had always been quick to scold others about their lawn decorations and property upkeep. But it turned out her own fence was slightly too high and her Christmas lights had stayed up past the approved time frame. The HOA president handed her the notice with a straight face, and Karen lost it. "This is ridiculous," she screeched. I am the HOA." "Not anymore," someone muttered under their breath. The final blow came when she was quietly removed from her unofficial HOA position. The board had tolerated her power trip for years, but now that she was making legal threats and dragging in the police, they wanted nothing to do with her. She tried to appeal. She tried to rally her dwindling group of supporters. But it was too late. The same neighbors she had harassed for years? They weren't afraid of her anymore. And as for me? My driveway remained exactly where it was, ***, untouched, unmoved, and gloriously private, ***. Karen didn't take her downfall well. At first, she tried to act like nothing had changed, marching around with her clipboard as if her words still carried weight. But without the HOA backing her up, her complaints fell flat. Neighbors who once tiptoed around her now openly ignored her, some even greeting her with smug smiles as they put up decorations that she would have once deemed excessive. Slowly, her presence in the neighborhood faded. The endless violation notices stopped appearing. The tense, passive-aggressive confrontations at the mailbox ceased. The street felt lighter, like a storm had finally passed. One day, a for sale sign popped up in Karen's yard. No one was surprised. And when the moving truck finally rolled away, the neighborhood celebrated in their own way. People put up extra bright Christmas lights. A few garden gnomes mysteriously appeared on lawns. And for the first time in years, Tom let his cat roam freely, unafraid of being hit with a trespassing complaint. As for me, life went back to normal. My driveway stayed exactly where it was, untouched, unbothered, and blessedly free of HOA Karens. The grass grew a little greener, the mailboxes stood a little taller, and everyone learned one valuable lesson. Never let a clipboard-wielding tyrant tell you what to do.